everyone, my name is Sam. Thanks for checking out this video. If you get to the end and liked it, then subscribe. Bell notification, give the video a thumbs up. We're in the same room. I feel like sitting, and this has been my chair for the this has been my spot. I finally stole back the corner spot, which is my favorite spot on my Alice chair. Anyways, yeah, so, next Tuesday, I'll do my, regular March wrap-up and all that stuff, but this Tuesday, I wanted to talk about, I don't know if it's gonna be much of a rant, but do another ranting librarian, because I've seen this kind of topic pop up, and I've addressed it a little bit in other videos before, but it was in the past, couple weeks, especially because of quarantine and everything. I remember seeing, and they're not the only authors to do it. I've seen, I think it was Laura Sebastian and Victoria Lee both tweeting about pirating, and saying things like, I've seen, I've gone to places and I've seen that, my book got 10,000, downloads, and I think, oh my god, if I had 10,000 more royalties, that would be this much money, and, authors, especially, it takes a long time and a lot of consistent publishing, for them to be making, J.K. Rowling chunks of money. Rowling is, a drop in the bucket when you look at how many authors get published, how many get published after their debut novel. It's a hard industry to make a proper living in. Writing is, if you can do it full time, that's great, but a lot of the time, authors, it takes a while for them to be doing just writing. They're working multiple jobs. So I get why someone like Laura Sebastian or Victoria Lee, are just authors in general are I'm Maggie Stiefvater's one who's talked about it before, and I get it. I mean, I'm not a writer or creator of art, but especially in this time period right now where everyone's at home, we're all mass consuming art. We have artists doing all these concerts online, authors doing readings online, and libraries doing virtual stuff on their YouTube and Facebook pages and everything. So we're all relying on art and entertainment industry to keep us entertained. So talking about pirating, and I would get why an author, especially when you look at, pirating in music. Pirating in music is very differently. Ariana Grande is still going to have a buttload of money no matter how much people pirate Ariana Grande. Her music, right? There's so many different platforms. You have tours, you have sponsorship deals with all these extra incomes, you have streaming incomes and all that stuff. Books don't have that same kind of thing, so it is kind of shitty when you really, really think about it. But I wanted to more talk about this thing that whenever the topic of pirating comes up, I, without fail, will always see a bunch of people post something along the lines of, I think I screenshotted it, I'll put it here if I did, of, there's no reason to pirate. I'm not saying verbatim, but the gist is, there's no reason to pirate. Go to the library or wait for a book sale. And, I know those people are, I understand, the positive, intentions or something like that, but I don't think people understand why or who pirates. And it's been very interesting, especially in the last couple of years, as pirating is getting more popular and common. So, let's talk about this. So, I wrote down as many points as I could find and tried to organize them a little bit most logically, so I have this to just refer to. But I mean, pirating, first off the bat, that concept of just go to the library and wait for a book sale is very wonderful in an ideal world. But if you do not live in a very urban, well-funded community with libraries, in the United States specifically, it's actually pretty useless of a comment, and in more so just kind of shows that there is a big disconnect in the quality of services and funding. First off the bat, even in the United States, there's no required, funding across the board in every part of the country for libraries. So, if you live in a community that has, officials in your town or city, depending on who their funding body is, that really supports library and the works they do, that's great. They may fund the crap out of your library. There's not many of them, but, some libraries have more, when they ask for a new branch, they get a new branch. When they say, we need emergency funding for this, then we get emergency. There's ones that, we say, we can't give you all the money for this, but we can hire you, a grant writer, part-time or full-time, whose whole job will be to find you funding sources, grants, sponsorships, all that stuff. And then we have libraries who, in some of my communities, that are open for whopping, 6-ish hours a week. They are also the schoolhouse public library, so I hope you're comfortable going into a school as a grown adult. They're also in the middle of nowhere farm communities. It's just wherever the school was placed. So I hope you have access to a vehicle and don't work during those limited, hours where that. If you do, sorry. This just isn't for you, apparently. So kind of just directly related to that topic, I don't think Americans realize international licensing, and this isn't just with books. The amount of times I've had Americans say, like, oh, it's just on Hulu. Hulu doesn't exist outside of the United States. You can't get the HBO Go channel subscription in Canada. That's not a thing here. You have to go through Bell to get their Crave TV subscription, to buy the extra upgrade package. Same thing with Stars, because for some reason, however long ago, they sold the rights in Canada to Bell. I don't know why. Companies try to delay release English language content in English language countries, and then are shocked when Australia is mass pirating. Well, yeah, you try and release season whatever of this show 6 months after it's aired everywhere else, they've pirated it. The internet exists. People are not going to just sit there for 6 months having everything spoiled on their Twitter timeline because they've taken such a long ass time to YouTube is a perfect example of a bunch of those stupid late night shows. I say stupid, other than Jimmy Fallon and James Corden, I love them. But they license block basically a bunch of stuff. So all those carpool karaoke's and all that stuff, they're not available in every country everywhere all the time. They'll do sometimes special exceptions. Whenever BTS was, I think they immediately made it watchable in Korea and all those places. But I have on multiple occasions had to turn my VPN on, and I live in Canada, to tell them that I live in the United States in order to watch something on YouTube. That is not something that is exclusive to, videos though. There are several times where Canadian authors, the book is written by a Canadian author, and the licensing for an audiobook has not been made available in Canada. So yeah, people pirate it. So sure, there might be 10,000 in that example that was brought up there, hits on someone downloading that file. That does not mean those people were 10,000 people that were going to be paying you royalties by buying it in a legitimate way. There's a good chance that a good chunk of them couldn't afford it, which we're going to talk about, or it was just literally not legally available in that country. Perfect example. I just tried to watch Relic Hunter a couple weeks ago, and I had to go through some sketchy websites because despite the fact that I grew up watching it on City TV, and I think it's a Canadian production, it is not available I can't find streaming availability anywhere in Canada. It's in the US on Amazon Prime and all these different places. I can't find it in Canada. I also can't even imagine what it's like dealing with international licensing when it has to be translated as well. I feel like a country like Germany normally gets their stuff out within 3 to 4 months or so after the regular release dates. But I don't know what that is like when you're looking at countries like India, that the book has to be popular enough in certain places for them to buy the international licensing for a lot of foreign language countries that they likely think they're going to have to do translations for. Even though a lot of people outside of the United States, Canada, and Australia speak English. It may be their second or third language, but they can still speak it and consume media in that way. So it's just a whole issue that international licensing is a big problem when you're looking at pirating, for sure. Another thing I don't think people realize is a lot of communities are dependent on public libraries that are either dual libraries, so meaning they are housed in a school normally, but they'll serve during certain hours. They'll have a staff that is technically designated for the students, so the kids can come in, and then during certain hours the public can come in, or normally they'll have everyone can come in at every time. If they have a separate exit, it's normally like that, which is an issue in itself, especially something we're dealing with in Canada, that if you, for example, were forced to go through residential school and then now you have to go through a government institution school and sign in for security reasons in order to access your public library, that's not really accessible. And on top of that, schoolhouse libraries have restrictions and they do censor things. It seems a lot in the United States, especially, that you have to have content that is only age appropriate for school libraries, even if you're serving the public, as well as the fact that they just decide that, well, if you're, this age, I deem it that I wouldn't let you read this. Has nothing to do with what you think is appropriate for yourself or what your parents think is appropriate for yourself. I myself have deemed that it's not a good fit for you. As well as books that bring up a lot of social justice issues are constantly being censored in schoolhouse libraries. The Hate You Give is a perfect example. That one was constantly being challenged, especially in states like Texas and everything like that. So even a book that has been sitting on the New York Times bestsellers list for 3 years could potentially be blocked in a lot of those communities or restricted to the number of copies available. And again, that's assuming that your schoolhouse public library is somewhere central, somewhere that is accessible, somewhere that has lots of hours, somewhere that you feel comfortable going into, even though I'm only 27 and I don't feel comfortable with the concept of going into a schoolhouse public library. It's weird. It makes me so uncomfortable. And there's a safety issue, especially in that. Wages versus cost. And I think this is something that people are like, oh, well, then you can just read like fewer books or blah, blah, blah. But I don't think people realize how excessive it has gotten. Wages versus cost. I mean, I am lucky enough that I can pay my rent, my student loans, and feed myself and my dogs. And I can have, a couple $100s to do my leisure stuff for the year, for the month. That is not really the norm, though, it seems. I'm lucky enough that I went into an industry where everyone that I graduated with pretty immediately had at least contract jobs my contract turned into full-time permanent. And I am on a wage grid and I have really good extended health care and whatever. I really lucked out. But I know people that I graduated with in undergrad, so 6-ish years ago, that went into teaching. They're still doing substitute teaching. Just, whenever they have that. So they don't have a stable income. So on top of that, a lot of them are living in central Ontario for work and all that stuff. The cost of living is too high. And some of that is, books in Canada are just more expensive. After the currency exchange, they are more expensive than they are in the United States. They deadass just write /higher in Canada on a bunch of books now. Okay? They're pricing themselves out of the market. I've ranted about this before. And that's not something exclusive to Canada. When you leave the United States, they charge more for books. I'm not talking about books who then you have to translate from English to another language and cost effective the translator. Books in English language countries are more expensive outside of the United States. And I know that we love to be books are a luxury item and blah, blah, blah. We tax it as a luxury item in a lot of countries or whatever. Reading is not, though. Reading is an essential skill that you need in life. So we can say that all we want. But when people have access to books when they're younger, there's been studies done on this. They're better literacy skills, which attaches to all these other developmental skills and life skills that if you struggle with a lot of that stuff, it makes it really difficult. And then on top of that, we have this issue in the world right now that maybe you don't think about in the United States because it doesn't immediately affect you. But there are a lot of countries that had books as, I'm looking at, especially Latin America right now, just because of everything that's going on. A lot of those countries are becoming economically and politically unstable because so much of their industries and economy and GDP and everything were relying on industries like oil, which is a very volatile, very all over the place industry. So costs of things are skyrocketing overnight. Access to food, access to housing, milk, diapers, all these things that are basic essentials are, people are wiping out their savings just trying to access that stuff in a lot of these countries now. So yeah, books are kind of going to go to the wayside. And unfortunately, a lot of those places, unemployment is giant. And a lot of those countries too, there's not a lot of libraries. And there's the restriction on international licensing, as well as censorship in libraries. So, no, that's not an applicable answer to why are you pirating in Brazil or wherever it may be. Another issue that I've talked in length on before about this channel is the fact that publishers, well, just general, libraries don't have the money to keep up. And publishers have created purchasing platforms that they are the ones that have created that are not sustainable. So they've kind of put the problem on this out. I think this is what I mentioned before, that they've kind of created this perfect storm that publishers have gotten really money hungry, and they do not see themselves working with libraries. They see libraries as taking money out of their back pocket. So they don't want to work in tandem with libraries anymore. So that concept of, we'll just go to the library, no, publishers are working to make sure that you don't. Which they think that means that you're going to go then spend the money rather than, oh, they don't have the money. That's why they're going to the library. They can't afford it. So when we put this other paywall blockade up, they go around it by pirating. Okay? So it's not an at the author. It's because of a lot of the publishers' things. And that's just how they write in the contracts. Authors, from what I understand, have zero control over anything like that. I just pulled, for example, a couple ones. So how much, and these are in Canadian dollars. So how much do you think an ebook of the book American Dirt is? It's $60 for every 24 months. So every 2 years we have to pay that publisher $60. So when it comes to renew time, we look at those books, and if there's no holds on them, we won't rebuy them. Even, a lot of us don't have collection development librarians to see if there's more in a series. So if we own books 2 and 3, but book 1 is up for renewal and there's no holds, we probably won't rebuy book 1, and then book 2 and 3 or whatever go to waste. This becomes also a big issue of when authors have publications come out and then all of a sudden they have a super popular book and people want to go through their back catalog. Libraries won't have those anymore. When authors, people come out of school. I didn't really pleasure read for a long time because I was just reading so much for school. When I came out, I won't have access to the back catalog of Leigh Bardugo, of Julie Berry, of all those authors. Even with how old it is, the e-audiobook for City of Bones is almost $115, and you have to rebuy that every 24 months. I can't even imagine how much money Cassandra Clare's made. Stalking Jack the Ripper, the audiobook for that is $92, and you have to rebuy it every 24 months. The ebook for Stalking Jack the Ripper is $45, which is on the lower spectrum of ebook pricing. I will give you that, but you do have to rebuy it every 24 months. And the e-audiobook for Sky Without Stars is a very weirdly expensive one. The e-audiobook is $141.52, and you have to rebuy it every 2 years. I don't know why. It's not a New York Times bestsellers book or anything like that. I don't know why they've published it so high. Publishers are gouging libraries so that our collection won't really grow anymore, but we're dumping the same amount, if not more money, into these collections. And it's hard because everyone's moving more online to borrowing, especially in a time right now. Now, publishers have been a little bit better in the last month because of the he who shall not be named virus, but a lot of it's temporary. We've been kind of told it's been temporary, or they're like, okay, well, we'll no longer say you have to rebuy it every 52 borrows. We'll just say you have to rebuy it every 2 years. It's nice and when you first look at it, but in reality of can you just give me the option to buy it at an upfront cost, because I don't have the collection development librarian to track this shit. We have tens of thousands of books in our collection. We don't have the time to be monitoring this. And we ourselves are trying to get around this because we have so many small libraries that we create consortiums. So we all pool our money into this same collection, which is a great idea because we now have more of a collection to choose from, but we also now have more patrons accessing it. So whenever a book from an adult historical fiction with a World War II setting that has a female pilot spy or whatever comes out nowadays, it automatically gets 6 months worth of holds. Yeah, so publishers have created purchasing platforms, generally called metered access, so you have to rebuy it every certain length of time or every certain number of borrows. The publishers decide that themselves, and per book it seems to vary a little bit. And then you also have publishers which have embargoed libraries. Now, Macmillan did walk back on it because I think it was 7 months or so, I think it started in April 2019, allowed libraries to buy only one ebook copy of a book, and then they couldn't buy any for, I think it was 60 or 90 days after. This was an attempt to drive up holds so patrons will come, see how long the wait list was for a book like Supernova by Marissa Meyer was a book, because it's under Fewell and Friends, which is under Macmillan. So I think it was them where they had that restriction on it. And so then you see the long line and you go, screw it, I'll just go buy it on Kindle, which is great if you have the money to go buy it. But increasingly there's a lot of us who don't have that money, so what do? We go pirate it. I've mentioned this before, not all libraries are free. I don't think a lot of people, when they say things online, think that. There's membership fees. There are some communities that they're private. It's not a universal thing around the world to have free accessible libraries. You also have late fees. If you accrue late fees, you get blocked after a certain point. If you can't afford to pay those back, oh well. not their problem anymore. Then there's the thing of like, do you need cost of transportation to get to the library and all that other crap? And then just some communities don't have libraries. They're not big enough. Their community people who run it aren't, they don't care enough. Some are just like super low income, so they don't have the money. A lot of the times some places will take it directly from your taxes and go there. Some of it they'll take the county, will, calculate there's this many people in the community, we'll give $5 for every person in the community, so this is how much you get. Censorship in libraries is something that's becoming more and more of a thing. As libraries are stopping this coming from this being politically neutral perspective, a lot of us have been shifting now to we're a safe place for people. So if you're coming in to make it a non-safe place for the homeless, for immigrants, for the queer kid, any of those, that is not this place for you a lot of the time. And when libraries do things like they have room bookings through third-party platforms, and when someone books that who is, controversial on the right a lot of the time, but I've seen controversial on the far left too, people get really upset and mad at libraries. And those things, when those relationships get broken down, they take a long time to build back up, because people look at the libraries of, oh, so you haven't changed. You're still this very government thing that, was put together by a white man who files your books in this way, who classifies, Indigenous as fiction and all this shit. You are the exact same institution as you were before. And then we have libraries that go like that. No, we're a freedom of space to air your voices. But at some point you're giving a platform for people to air hate. And so that's where some libraries are really, really do struggle. So there are some libraries, though, that are also simultaneously struggling with, especially in the United States, I've been seeing, censoring of content that people, unfortunately in the United States, it seems to be a lot of the far right, that they are upset with libraries that have been doing drag story time. So they're putting in place that they will arrest librarians, they will fine them, there's jail time attached to it if they do things that the governor, who is, I don't want my kids to see a drag queen, deems inappropriate. So there's that censorship. There's also just widespread governments in developed countries. I think South Korea is one of them, that their government actually identifies in their definitions that being gay is a mental health issue. And I've seen somewhere that they do censor that content in their libraries. So in a time where in the United States we're saying, oh my god, we're publishing this representation, oh my god, there's a Own Voices gay rep, but then you've made it financially inaccessible to libraries, or the libraries, can't actually buy it, so then you're depending on those people going to buy it out of the pocket of their own money, assuming that they have it. You're not really doing much at that point if the community, that minority community that you're writing this book for, marketing it as, can't actually access it. Another big thing, especially with audiobooks, Audible exclusives. I don't think people realize how much of a pain in the goddamn ass those are. And I know the publishers make those deals so that they can get around libraries. Audible, when you see a book that says Audible exclusive, Audible does not sell books to libraries. So they've bought the exclusive production rights, so they make the audiobook and will only sell it in that commercial thing where people go on the Audible platform. So I want to read to you, and this is just through a quick scroll through my English language. I can't even imagine what the international language is. The English language on audible.com. This was just a glance through my wish list and my owned library. So these books are all Audible exclusives. So this is why people pirate heavily, because Audible they have a moral objection to Amazon, which I get, or they can't afford it because Audible exclusives. Night Spinner, anything by Niall Schusterman, basically anything from Sarah J. Maas. So if you don't see Crescent City in your library, it's because she sold the exclusive audiobook rights to Audible. The only one of Sarah J. Maas's that I've seen available to libraries is the Throne of Glass series, and that took us years actually to get in Canada. It wasn't available in Canada for a long time. Woven in Moonlight, The Stars We Steal, Seventh Son, Winterwood, Glitch Kingdom, Into the Crooked Place, To Kill a Kingdom, Wren Hunt, Storm Dancer series by Jay Kristoff, Born a Crime by Trevor Noah, that massive book, yeah, it's an Audible exclusive. Basically any adult and YA book from Brandon Sanderson. Basically, yeah, anything from Niall Schusterman. Most of Leigh Bardugo stuff, most of Anna Marie McLemore's content, The Shadow of What We Lost, those big fat, adult fantasy trilogy that's really popular. Bloodleaf, Priory of the Orange Tree, The Invisible Library, Vicious by V.E. Schwab, The Trail of Lightning series by Rebecca Roanhorse, which is particularly disappointing because libraries are trying really hard with Indigenous content in Canada, and then that is a quite popular book, and then we can't buy the audiobook for it, which is frustrating, especially that format, because a lot of the Indigenous communities around us have lower literacy rates. So audiobooks are really, really helpful, and I can't actually get them, the Trail of Lightning series, which is infuriating. The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon, you know, that giant series that she's never gonna finish. Despite Ace of Shades and King of Fools not being Audible exclusives, Queen of Volts is. So the libraries will have books 1 and 2. We can't get audiobook 3. When that book comes out. The Lady Julia Gray series by Deanna Rayborn is an Audible exclusive. So these are just through a quick glance. Just literally go through, look, all of Audible stuff. All of those books are not available for libraries to purchase. And the publishers do that. They give that exclusive rights for a reason. It's to cut us out. Because again, we're stealing money out of their back pocket, they see, rather than, oh, this drives people to pirating. So what can you do if you have an issue with pirating and you want to help solve this? Talk to publishers. This has been a big issue, that make them find out why they don't want to, because they can do it, want to sell them actually to libraries for legal use. Because what they're doing now is directing people to pirating, unfortunately. And it's no other's effect. It's affecting the authors who already don't make enough money. When it comes time to voting, find out who was running in your area, either local elections. Local elections are probably a lot more relevant. Whatever. Find out what they think of libraries and what their funding plan is. If they say, oh, I haven't been to a library and I don't know what it is, I would follow up and ask, well, what? I need you to find that out before I can tell you I would vote for you or not. That's a huge issue. Libraries are locally funded a lot of the time, and so few people show up for their freaking municipal and town elections. They're huge, huge impact. If they don't get enough funding, they can't buy enough books while people are running to the library in droves because of cost of living issues, especially with layoffs being what they are right now. That's why you're going to see more pirating, because we have more patrons to serve now. Publishers are making it inaccessible for us to buy books. And then pirating is available. That's just, everyone knows how to do it nowadays. And look for campaigns. Right now there's one called Stronger #e-content for libraries. It's one in Canada. It does the very brief description of, the metered access pricing and everything. Yeah, and contact publishers, because libraries are fucking fed up. We would really appreciate the support. Hi from editing, Sam. Just something I forgot to clarify in this, because it's not really directly related to libraries, but when I see people say things like, oh, just go to the library, I also, without fail, seem to see someone say, or wait for a sale on books. Just pointing out that really doesn't matter if your math is still in the negative. If you still don't have the money after paying rent and food to buy a luxury item, like a book, that sale of $4 off means nothing if you're still negative $400. That's just my long-winded rant. That is the topic. I would love to know if you have more things to add, whether it's for or against my stance. Put it in the comments section down below. I'd love to watch it. Whatever. I'm not saying pirate. If you can afford to pay for your content, books, music, movies, please do. That's the only way they need financial support to be able to continue doing that stuff. But I'm really, really tired of this. Libraries are a solution to everything. Everyone has access to a library. There's no reason to pirate. We have libraries bullshit, because it's really disconnected from actual reality. And we need to find a way that we can legally make content more accessible, so publishers can make money, authors can make money, editors can make money, all this stuff. I will leave all of my social media in the comment section down below. If you follow me, I will follow you back.